Today I'll be working in my workbook called Opening a Window into the Psalms, which covers Psalms 1 through 21. If I was doing the first Psalm in this book, I'd go over this in detail, but since it's not the first Psalm, go ahead and stop the recording if you'd like to read this. This is the general study on the Psalms. This is separating the Psalms into groups. The musical nature of the Psalms, these will be used in these Psalms, and we will go over them when we hit it in the Psalms. And then the poetic features of the Psalms, which I bring up several times when I'm analyzing the Psalms. So now looking at the Psalms that are in this book, we're going to be doing Psalm 15. And so we'll go there. Psalm 15, who may dwell in your sacred tent? Now, as I've mentioned in the other Psalms, the Psalms did not actually come with titles. These titles I've gotten actually from King James or New King James, and probably New King James, actually, the way they're written. And it's just easier, but they weren't part of the original Psalm. There's a Psalm of David, and let me go ahead and read it. And we have all the verses here. Lord, who may dwell in your sacred tent? Who may live on your holy mountain? The one whose walk is blameless, who does what is righteous, who speaks the truth from their heart, whose tongue utters no slander, and who does no wrong to a neighbor, and casts no slur on the others, who despises a vile person, but honors those who fear the Lord, who keeps an oath even when it hurts, and does not change their mind, who lends money to the poor without interest, who does not accept a bribe against the innocent. Whoever does these things will never be shaken. Okay, so that's the Psalm. So with every Psalm, I have done some general comments before we got into the analyzation of the Psalm. In this case, it is part of the first book of Psalms, Psalms 1 through 41. The Psalms were divided into, and I'm thinking 5 books, but it might have been 4. According to the NIV Study Bible, Psalm 15 is grouped in Psalms 15 through 24, where Psalm 15 and 24 frame a cluster of psalms that have been arranged in a concentric pattern, with Psalm 19 serving as the hinge. There are thematic links between Psalm 16 and 23, 17 and 24, 18 and 20 and 21. The framing Psalms, 15 and 24, are thematically linked by their evocation of the high majesty of God and their insistence on moral purity, without which no one would see the Lord. Psalm 15 specifically asks, who has access to the temple? According to Jamieson, Fausset, and Brown, Psalm 15 is considered a wisdom or didactic psalm in that there is a comparison between good and evil. The narrated Bible in chronological order says that Psalm 15 is a psalm about righteousness and wickedness. Thomas Nelson's Chronology Bible places this psalm in 1 Chronicles 22:26, when David is setting up the priests, Levites, magicians, and gatekeepers for all the work in the temple. Pastor David Gusick believes this psalm corresponds well to when David brought the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem and Uzziah died when he touched the ark in 2 Samuel 6, 1 through 12. That's a good place for this, that's for sure. Psalm 15 has only 2 sections and a conclusion. The first section is just one verse. It is, who may dwell in the house of God, which is verse 1. Will you look at that real quick? The second section is the characteristics of a godly person, verses 2 through 5a. And the conclusion is the last part of verse 5. Okay. So let's get into the analysis of this. The first section is, who may dwell in the house of God, which is verse 1. This psalm starts with 2 questions. What questions are those? Lord, who may dwell in your sacred tent? Who may live on your holy mountain? There's really a lot to these questions, especially in the light of the story that it may center around. First, we know that no one, not even priests, could actually live in the Lord's sacred tent, also known as the tabernacle. The tabernacle or sacred tent was what the Israelites carried around with them throughout their traveling in the wilderness for worship, and then where they worshiped God when they were in the promised land. The Holy Mountain, to be a synonym to the sacred tent, was not just Jerusalem and the Temple Mount, but more like Mount Sinai, when no one could climb it other than Moses. It's not a literal question, but a figurative question. Basically, who may abide with God? If Pastor David Gusick is correct, and this psalm was written during the time the ark was brought to Jerusalem, then let's look at that passage and see what happened. 2 Samuel 6, 1 through 12. David again brought together all the able young men of Israel, 30,000. He and all his men went to Baalah in Judah to bring up from there the ark of God, which is called by the name of the Lord Mighty, who is enthroned between the cherubim on the ark. They set the ark of God on a new cart and brought it from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. Uzzah and Io, sons of Abinadab, were guiding the new cart with the ark of God on it, and Io was walking in front of it. David and all Israel were celebrating with all their might before the Lord, with castanets, harps, lyres, timbrels, sistrums, and cymbals. When they came to the threshing floor of Nakon, Uzzah reached out and took hold of the ark of God because the oxen stumbled. The Lord's anger burned against Uzziah, because of his irrelevant act. Therefore, God struck him down and he died there beside the ark of God. Then David was angry because the Lord's wrath had broken out against Uzzah, and to this day that place is called Perez Uzzah. David was afraid of the Lord that day and said, "How can the ark of the Lord ever come to me?" He was not willing to take the ark of the Lord to be with him in the city of David. Instead, he took it to the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite. The ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite, for 3 months, and the Lord blessed him and his entire household. Now King David was told, "The Lord has blessed the household of Obed-Edom and everything he has because of the ark of God." So David went to bring up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing. So what in the scripture in 2 Samuel would cause David to wonder who could be righteous enough to abide with God? Because Uzziah accidentally touched it and he got killed right off the bat. What in scripture 2 Samuel gave David confidence again, and who could be righteous enough to abide with God? The fact that Obed-Edom was blessed when the ark was in his house or household. The next section is the characteristics of a godly person. The balance of the psalm is the answer to these questions in verse 1. Notice verse 2 through part of verse 5 is one sentence. The qualities of a person worthy to dwell in the Lord's sacred tent are the one whose walk is blameless, who does what is righteous, who speaks the truth from his heart, whose tongue utters no slander, who does no wrong to the neighbor, and who casts no slur on others, who despises a vile person, who keeps an oath even when it hurts, who fear the Lord, and then who doesn't change his mind, who lends to the money to the poor without interest, and who doesn't accept a bribe against the innocent. Repetition. Notice how many whos there are in the whole psalm. If you include the words whose and whoever, how many whos are there? 1, 2 in verse 1, 3, 4, 5 in verse 2. So that's 5. 3, 4, 5 in verse 2. 6, 7 in verse 3. 8, 9, 10 in verse 4. 11, 12, 13 in verse 5. I think I've got them all. The last sentence of verse 5b is the result. What is the result if you do all these things listed in verses 2 through 5a? Whoever does these things will never be shaken. Psalm 15 is not directly quoted elsewhere in the Bible. Psalm 15 is used by Jews, particularly as a reflection on ethical living and the qualities of a person worthy of God's presence. And it was traditionally used as an entrance liturgy to the temple in ancient Israel. So that's the end of this psalm. I hope you enjoyed it. I will talk to you later, hopefully. Bye now.